Saturday night, and it's right after the Lunar New Year. And I just wanted to say Happy New Year, Happy New Moon, and welcome to February. We made it. And I just wanted to come on tonight. I'm dressed up for some fun. I'm dressed up because I wanted, I've been thinking about making this video for a couple of weeks. I've really spent the last month in deep silence. The end of the year, well, actually, the short story is Thanksgiving. Some things happened within the family, and it was all hands on deck. Everything is so much better now, but we're in recovery. So then January came around, and January has been even more intense personally, and I had to really continue to take care of myself. And on the one hand, I've been working diligently for the last 10 months on healing some things in my body, healing some things in my life, healing some things in my heart. And all to say that the end of the year, I had a deep and a complete reset of what was going on within my body. I will say that, of course, part of that did include at least getting assessments from the numerous medical appointments, and all to say to make sure that whatever was going on within my body, none of it was permanent, none of it was structural, none of it was anything that couldn't be handled by the body, that didn't need to be handled by anything other than my own 25-year plus practice of self-care and wellness, and living a life of using herbs and essential oils and herbal teas and gardening and fresh air, and raising my children in an environment with a lot of love, a lot of creativity, a lot of nature. In short, again, when I got pregnant with my second child, I ended up being on a medical leave. And then very quickly after having had my second child, I got pregnant within 2 months and had my third child. And there were big reasons in which I needed to stay home and help us stay grounded. We did have people around us that were in their 40s that were, battling or having their own journey with cancer and didn't make it. And so my immediate family that was available, who had been available and supported us with our oldest, who is 6 years older than our youngest and 5 years older than our middle child. Now we had this on our own, and I'm grateful for all the support that I received. And my husband and I have always been independent thinkers. We've always been good listeners. I wouldn't say we've been rebels without a cause, but we'll listen and then make our own choices. And people telling us doing things holistically and seeking assistance for one of our children who had something that could have been very serious, but in the very early stages, I stayed home so my husband could continue to work. I stayed home so that I could take care of the kids and nurture, support them, whatever doctor's appointments that were needed. I loved to homeschool them, so we kind of just took life one breath at a time. Had a very strong inner knowing that even though we didn't have a lot of experience with the children, and that definitely our middle one of our children could have developed into something that was would take them out of the game, so to speak. So we decided to do it our way. And why am I even saying this? I guess because there's been so much that has gone into thinking I'm going to get back into my healing practice, or getting back to just kind of contributing in a way to the world, in a way that invites our healing, that invites unraveling some really big, complicated things that we've experienced in life. Unraveling and unlooping and untying myself from the constraints of my own birth family experiences, and schooling in a public school system, and putting off the things that society put on me or would want me to have. And even within the spiritual community, that even within the spiritual community, there has been what I'll just say, it's the spiritual matrix. So I will just kind of tie up the loose end about my one child, is that what we ended up doing is going and getting invoking. I did prayer and invocation to find the best possible doctor for us, who would work with us in our belief in the body's ability to heal itself, and with wanting to take this process, some might say seriously, but we attended to it immediately in the moment, fully aware, fully engaged, using all the things that we used and that I've used my whole life, but really in my adult life, right? Recovering from narcissistic parenting and a narcissistic family, and being essayed at a very young age, and continuous time period in which, like so many families, wanted to just brush it under the rug and wanted to not share it. And again, with great respect and sympathy, compassion for those, because many of those, not only in my family but other families, they were harmed themselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. And there was a lot of guilt with their own children, having the same thing happen to them. Like, how could this happen? Why didn't I know? Why did I need to see the signs? And can bury and be guilty. And I know you would think you would want to carry it out in a holistic way, that you would want to do the right thing for your child, but when you're somebody that doesn't have that capacity, has never maybe really healed, they make choices, and regardless of whatever those choices are, as the next generation of that SA abuse, mentally, emotionally, physically, you still have to deal with all of that, and I do really feel like, that's their own healing to do. And in my own healing to do is, for the first time in a very long time, about 50 years, have I ever been able to openly express that, openly say, that was a part of my journey. It was a very difficult time in society. There was a lot in Southern California. There was a lot of people inflicting pain and abuse on children. As I became older, because I only lived in that neighborhood until I was about 18, I would mentally go down the street, and after in my mind mentally go, oh, that person was an abuser, that person, though, those kids abused me and others as teens, oh, that was an abuser. It was just completely crazy, like walking down the street and seeing how many abusers there were in the neighborhood. It was a miracle that more of that didn't go on, right? And so that's the way that my family has always dealt with it. And I have always said I'm not going to deal with it that way anymore. I don't feel like it defines who I am, but I also um, feel like I can no longer carry that secret forward. And a part of that goes into how I raised my kids, um, about having babysitters that abuse them, having people in the neighborhood who were babysitters or watched them, or teenagers or older siblings that abused younger uh, teenagers or their younger siblings in the area. It was such a mosh pit of abuse, and it was so horrible, and it was really hard to see, any way out of it. And then you ask for help, and they're told you have to keep it quiet, you have to protect us as a family and what we look like. You have to protect your abuser. And then I think when I got into my 20s and I got into my 30s, I thought, well, I probably never, there's really no reason for me to come out and say all of this went on, except for I've chosen health and healing and wellness. I've chosen living a life of a family, bringing the family back. And even if it's not your birth family, that you get to re-choose and re-choose, and you're going to create your own family. So, oh my goodness. I'm probably just going to go ahead and lay it all out in this video, and then I probably really don't have a great desire to talk about it, other than I do only talk about it when things come up so that people understand. Well, who is Lori? Well, Lorilei is a survivor. I started off as Lori. I changed my name to Lorilei to represent the blossoming in who I am, that I'm not that controlled person that I had to be. I had to be there for my physical safety. I had to be there for my mental and emotional safety, for sure. And even as so I was thinking, even when the Me Too movement came out, that was very liberating. It was very shocking, it was very liberating, and it was very shocking as how in depth and how ingrained. But again, it goes into this aspect of hiding in society, hiding things that you don't want other people to see. And that comes from a very masculine point of view that says the way to make something stop is to hide it. The way to make something stop is to humiliate somebody. The way to make it stop is to make fun of somebody and put somebody, quote unquote, in their place. And people that have been abused or essayed, like I have and others have, we have anxiety. We have a lot of fear of actually memories of being harmed, or fear of being more harmed. That we're probably more likely to be people who are more sensitive. This is probably, quote unquote, we were easy prey because of our gender, because of our age, because maybe our temperament. All those things go into that. What was I going to say about that? So I want you to know that if you need to put a face on it, I'm that face. If you need to say, oh, that person probably never has had that happen to them, I did. And I'm not a victim. And I want to tell you another thing too, is it's not my karma. It wasn't karmic. I asked many questions about this. Like when I learned about karma, and I thought, oh gosh, maybe I did something really horrible to someone else in another experience, another life, continuing in life. I must have been a really bad person, and I really put myself through the ringer as an adult for a couple of years. And I kept searching and searching, like, well, maybe I'll know. Well, if I did, I want to make amends. I don't want to pretend that it's not me. And this is where the science and spirituality kind of came in, that says, oh, someone really well-meaning who I trusted, and I'd already had it about 3 times in 3 different communities, metaphysical communities, and meaning that has one person who spelled it out really clearly. Again, someone that I highly respected, and they're like, okay, we're going to lay this out for you. And basically what he said was that, let's say that you have so much money and you go to the grocery store and you buy all the things that you want, and you go to checkout and you have so many things that they've rung up on the register as your total, and you only have so much money, and you don't have enough money to pay for everything you want. And basically, he said that's karma, is that you haven't earned enough, and the amount of money that you have is commiserate with your life. Take a look at the life you were born in. Take a look at the circumstances. Take a look at the socioeconomic background. Take a look at the parental influence that you had. I mean, all these things. And again, this was somebody who was well-meaning, somebody I really trusted, somebody that I still really care about, but who was wrong. And everyone around me was like, you can't say that's wrong. You only think that's wrong because you've had abuse. You had, thank goodness, I had the father that I had, my DNA father, was not anywhere in the picture. But during my forming and during utero, he was violent. He kidnapped a sibling. I mean, there's some really big things. He set our belongings on fire. Like, I know all this stuff because, my mom had told me. If she hadn't told me, I wouldn't know all that stuff. And so I think that's another thing to think about, is that we don't think about these things often for our children. So this kind of all went into me informing my own parenting. So I was grateful in a way that person was never in my life because of all these things. But at the same time, there's been so many studies that have been done about, I had asked years ago about, how do you heal those things that happened to you while you were in utero? Like, having had 3 children and having decided that I would meditate every day, that I would listen to music every day, that I took DHA, that I took the very best care of myself that I ever did in this whole wide world when I was carrying the vehicles that would come for the souls, that would be available for the souls that came into my life. And that was a sacred privilege to be able to do that. I had dreams about my children at night. I had each one of my children came and communicated me with other ways because of the childhood that I had been brought into, and of course came into voluntarily. But I didn't come in here because of my karma. I didn't come in because that was all I could meager out. And of course, there was an abundance of love and an abundance of faith. There were so many wonderful things that were pluses and beneficial, but there were so many heavy things and stones and obstacles and things that were in that mix. But I came in with some deep senses of who I was, some deep, really good qualities. And for a long time, it's not that my parents didn't have good qualities, but there were some things that even at an early age, I could tell when people were telling the truth or not the truth. And often, right, people, adults, give you a little bit of kernel of truth and they wrap it in a whole bunch of mixed messages, truth, not truth, things that seem believable. They say the best lie has a little bit of truth. It is true, because I have learned through my own experience too that if somebody says something, there's some truth in it. I am, in my own intuition and my own thinking process, I'm calculating for truth. I'm not calculating for dishonesty. I'm calculating for truth. And I find truth in it. But what I found is that I have to calculate for total truth. Okay, if there's truth, how much truth is there? Is it 10% truth, 50% truth, 90% truth? So these are things that you learn as you move into adulthood, and that I learned to hone those basic skills that help me survive, that help me break down that cycle of abuse, because the physical abuse did stop, but the mental and the emotional abuse did not. It didn't. And until people change and grow and have that self-awareness, they will continue to be influenced by each other and the people around them, and things will not change. So I usually handled things head on when in my childhood, And at a very early age, I had a very tough conversation with somebody who was an alcoholic and who was drinking. And I said to them, because I couldn't believe they were doing this, and you might call it in my naivete, but in my innocence, my genuine innocence, thinking that I could have a conversation that would make a difference in someone's life, would said, hey, why are you drinking? Why are you on the road? You could hurt somebody else. You could hurt yourself. And we stay awake at night waiting for you to return safely. And that's at a high cost to us. How could you do that? And when this adult told me that it was none of my business and that I should mind what I was doing, I knew I had to leave, because I could not and would not, even when I was 18 years old, stay in a place in which people were knowingly doing these things and hurting other people. And when that person said to me, leave me alone, it's not your business, you have no say in this, I said, okay, I don't need that to be said to me again. I don't need to say, oh, poor me, this person isn't listening. I went, pivot. What do I do now? I'm not prepared to support myself yet. I'm prepared to go to college. I have all these plans. And it was like, okay, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other. I'm going to figure it out, because I'm not going to let this derail my dreams. Because I had already throughout my life been taking steps for myself. I'd been doing the really tough things. I'd been dedicating myself to studying and learning how to study and learning how my mind works. And I had challenges in concentration. I had challenges with my eyesight, and none of that did I say, oh, poor me, I was born with, genetic defects in my eyes and I had to have operations, and my brain and my eyes and perception don't work, and having a very overactive mind, I guess, in a lot of ways, being a very sensitive person, very, very active. It required sometimes 4 and 6 hours of study during high school, but I was dedicated to getting the best possible learning that I could. I didn't like what my head father one day had said, well, learning is like if you leave something on the table, and why would you leave something on the table that you could learn? And I'm like, I like that. And it meant that I got A's because of that, but I didn't get the A to get the A. I got the learning. And if I didn't get the A, that was okay. I got the learning. Because in college, some of my really hard math classes and some just really intense classes, I gave it everything I could and I got a C. And I was grateful to get that passing grade. But I knew that I put in my best effort in order to learn that. So it wasn't about what the grade was at the end, but it was about the resilience, the fortitude, the determination. Well, I'll say, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but a lot of that came from sports and playing competitive soccer. And I was in the first girls soccer team for my city. And when we started playing soccer, girls soccer, boys soccer had already been going on, men's soccer had been going on, of course. And so my coach coached the boys, and he soccer coach, football, came over and said, well, I want to take a group of girls. He didn't have children at the time, and he said, I want to train them. I don't really know that whole story, because I only know what he told me, what I remember at that time. I was about 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. It was junior high. And so he said, I teach a boys team, and if you really want to dedicate yourself, come and practice with the boys. They're the same age as you. I'm going to tell you, though, what I put them through, I expect you to go through the same things. So if I tell them to run a mile, you got to run a mile. If I tell them to do wind sprints for 20 minutes at the end of the practice, you got to do wind sprints. I don't want to hear you saying that you're not going to do it. If you will come and you will do that, it will be the best training that you've had. And so I thought, oh, another opportunity to train, another opportunity to do things. And I had many more really close friends that were guys in my class. And so a number of them were in there, and some of them turned out to be friends that I had as long as I lived in Southern California. and we became a really good support system, just beyond sports. But in those teenage years, kind of my brothers and my protectors, and um, it was because my coach said, hey, do you want to take this next stretch? And I said yes. And so we got to practice, and I was like, yeah. He wasn't kidding. It was no joke, because one of the really good things about him is he gave us lots of, he, he pushed us. He pushed us. He didn't say, oh, these are girls and we have to, be careful. And he said, no, they're athletes. They're people in life. They need a trainer. They need a coach that believes in them. And why does the coach push us? Because he believes in us. Because he would say things like, I would never ask you to do something that I didn't think you could do. Now, you might think you can't do it, but I know you can do it. And he really worked with everybody, and I really needed that, and I really wanted that, and I really valued pushing myself, and I valued the reward of having run. And some of the things that happened uh, in soccer, like I said, we ended up not just being a city team, but he also formulated with another group. A few of us went to play the beach teams along the coast in Southern California. Were always seemed to be the ones that were the toughest teams, the best teams. So actually, I played for a team that was in Huntington Beach, California, and it was just because my soccer coach and this other coach got together and mixed players from around the San Fernando and San Gabriel Valley. And so he actually took us twice a week, an hour and a half twice a week, to and from practice, in order to plan this year-round travel team. But anyway, it was another opportunity to play with other people that were my age and had a lot of experience. And of course, when you play against someone who has an excellent skill set and is growing, then you grow too. If you play against other players that are better than you, then that you can they push you in a way. You draw out of yourself what you need in order to play at that level, right? And you see them playing, and pretty soon you're playing too, and it's amazing. And so, like, some of the things, like a couple of things that he would said about this, like conditioning, right? Running a mile before practice starts, giving it everything you have, running on and off the field. At the end, we did do 20 minutes of wind sprints, right, where you run for a short burst, and what that does is it helps build your stamina. So, like all sports that have that long, like football and baseball and basketball and hockey and soccer, football, you're constantly running. So what he would say is, I want you to remember that when you're doing these wind sprints, it's like you're in a game and you're at the last 20 minutes. These wind sprints are going to give you that strength. They're going to give you the depth in your energy tank, your gasoline. So you're going to be able to play strong at the end of the game like you did at the beginning of the game, and you will be so grateful you did it. Just watch. You will see there will be other teams that don't have that. Maybe they don't have that kind of coaching style. And sure enough, it happened over and over again. Like, I had that energy. I had that extra strength. I had that extra 10 or 20% in my tank, and I could execute, and I could bring my coordination and body together. And we won so many games by either holding strong or scoring more points at the end of the game, or even if we had to go into overtime. We always were better. And then the next week we'd come back and be like, okay, push us really hard, because we know we are going to face some other really challenging teams, and we need to have that benefit. Let's do it. Another thing that he taught us, which was a wonderful life lesson, was that he would say, like, you always have to be a good sportsman. So even in soccer, if you're upset about something, you can't take that and be angry at people. You can't push people. You can't do. There's a lot of things that I see in soccer now that it's cringeworthy. It's heartbreaking, because there are men and women both are not doing what our coaches taught us, which is simply that rather than letting your anger take over and retaliating by doing things to other people, throwing an elbow, pulling football, right? Pulling the mask, tripping somebody, not really playing for the ball, not playing for the game or for the play, but playing to hurt or injure, or take someone out, trying to intimidate somebody by using your body or a tactic, even saying, oh, it's okay if I get a yellow card because I'm going to show them they can't push me. And it's like our coach always told us, don't allow yourself to be that person. Be the kind of person that says, whatever anger that is coming up on me, whatever I might feel is going on, I'm going to put that into my gameplay. I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to harness it for my good. And so I was able to turn the anger into extra energy. And then rather than slide tackling people or elbowing people or taking other people out or pushing people, I was able to take that energy and make a better play. I was able to use my mind and my body and outmaneuver people. I was able to watch what was going on and to make my move. Rather than try to retaliate against people, I was trying to build a better gameplay for myself. And so I loved soccer, and that was some of the most amazing experiences that I received in soccer. So I know some of you are just tuning in, but I did talk just the beginning about some things I didn't plan to talk about early childhood and about trauma and about some really tough things that might be triggering. But at this point, I'm saying that the positive side for me is I grew up where there was a lot of nature. I grew up in seeing the mountains every day in Southern California and being able to go to the beach. But through soccer, I really learned how to be a good sportsman. I learned how to push myself. I learned how to take anger instead of pushing it onto other people and retaliate, to take it into myself, to fuel me, to think better, to make better decisions, to make better plays, to observe around what was going on around me so I could make those plays. And then the last story about soccer I'll tell you is that so there was a play in which the other team had kicked the ball and it had gone past the goal net and it was out. I don't know how to say that, off past the net. And I picked the ball up. My mistake was I did not wait for the ref to blow the ball as being out. In my mind, I was thinking, oh, I got to grab the ball. We're going to do a goal kick. We need to get this back to Art so that we could score. It was out clear as day, but the ref said no, and I think it was a point. I think the ref was just really trying to make a point that I didn't let them call it. And I was very, very upset, obviously, because then they got a penalty kick. So it was like a handball right inside the goal net. It was outside the net anyway. It wasn't in the goal box. It was outside the net. But anyway, for whatever reason, they gave him a penalty kick, which is like 10 feet out from the goal line. They get to set the ball down. It's just the goalie and one person, and it very often they score. Let's just say the goalie does not have any kind of, has a huge disadvantage, and the person shooting has a great advantage. And that's what happened. They scored. It made me so mad. And so knowing I had this heat coming up and this anger coming up, and like I said, I didn't direct it out. Oh, ref, you suck, bad call. How could you do this? I really got into the zone. I really blacked everything out, and I remember all of this so clearly. So when they scored, I played center half back, so I was enjoying being every play. Right, I had to be in every play, and I always wanted to be in a position to be able to help the team, always. So anyway, I got the ball. Now we have to do start at the center line. You're going to do a kick restart, a kickoff. So they set the ball down, and somebody passed it to me. The forwards came up, they passed it to each other, they passed it back to me, and at this point the ball is exactly in the center of the field. So it's on the center line, it's the center of the center field, and I'm just like, we are going to score. So my plan was to kick the ball from the half line up over the defensive line so that my forwards could go back and score. And what happened was I over calculated how angry I was and how I was able to transform that anger and heat into making that soccer ball fly. And that soccer ball flew from the center line up over the defense and into the corner, and I scored. And I was the most shocked of anybody. I didn't plan to do that, but it was a lesson for me on so many levels, because in that moment I thought, okay, I did it. Whatever that mistake was, I have now made up for it, and now we need to move forward. And it's kind of funny because I have never been the kind of person that would, like, I don't like to brag, I don't like to get attention for doing things, but I was on an all-star team like the following year, and one person who didn't know me, we were on the all-star team together, and she said, did you hear about the girl who put the ball on the center line and scored from the center line? And I started cracking up. I'm like, that was me? Yeah, I know about her. I was like, oh, I didn't know anyone else had heard about that, but I thought that was, it was a high moment, and I could have taken that moment away from myself if I had taken that anger again and directed it outside, directed it at the ref, directed it at anyone else, even directed it at myself. But I took it and I moved on. So there's a lot of resilience that I learned, and I put myself into that position. So I want to say, no matter how bleak it is, I want to say no matter what kind of a childhood you had, I want to say no matter if you had parents that were not supportive, you had parents that had addiction, that you had parents that abused you, or siblings that abused you, or any kind of thing, because you could check all those boxes, and that was my life. But the one thing that I always felt like, that I could always be who I was, that none of that really defined me. And again, like I said, by my time I was in high school, and I could see that even if I had to study 4 hours at night and my peers did not, it was worth it to me, because at the end of the day, I was able to answer the questions. I was able to master that information the way that I wanted to. And so when I got to college, I was able to do the same thing, meaning I was more prepared for college than I thought I was, because I was learning how to learn, I was learning how to think critically, and I was also learning how to take care of myself, my body, my mind, and my spirit as well. Because by the time I got to college, my family was preparing to move from Southern California to Chicago. So I was the youngest, and I graduated from high school that May, and they were moving that next time. And I didn't know exactly what had happened, but as an 18-year-old, I was thinking that I'd gotten good enough grades to get into university. 90% of the people that I went to school with, it was a private all-girls Catholic school. Again, my parents did, make sacrifices and made sure that I had the opportunity for the best education. Gangs were very rampant in my neighborhood and also in the school, and they wanted something different for me. So again, I'm really grateful for what they were able to give to me. But here I was at 18, and I didn't realize that my parents were not supporting me, that my parents were not like, I have a 22-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And when you're 18, you don't know what to expect or what to ask for. You don't know what you don't know. And so I did end up living with a relative, and I did working, and I did go to a junior college, and I stayed in the area because I did not want to move. But what I did not realize is, I think my parents really did not do anything, in my point of view, to help me get into a university, get into a college, and do the things that I was doing. They were busy moving. They were busy doing the things that they did. Nobody helped them. I know this. Nobody helped them go to college. My father went into the military, and that's how he ended up getting his degree. My mother never did, because of other choices that she made in her life, although she could have been a lawyer or a doctor. A really amazing person. So here I was, not knowing that I wasn't getting that kind of support. And I ended up just asking, can I get some help? And the help that I got was to move across country. Well, that was not the best thing for me. It was the best thing for them. And I know that on their point of view, they would say, oh, well, we were just doing what you thought. But I'm like, no, so many things went into the situation where they did not want me to stay in Southern California. They offered, oh, I'll send you to college if you come to Chicago, and all these things. And I thought, I am not ready to be on my own. How did I get here? How did this happen? I don't know. So within 6 months, I did end up coming back. And at the end of the day, none of those promises were fulfilled. They ended up not putting me through college. There was a lot of stuff that happened, that they took me to a college and they showed me the college, and then I came home and said, well, let's apply for, whatever aid I can do. Let's apply to the college. And they're like, no, why would you even think that you would go to this college when they'd already taken me to that college in another state, showed me that college. And then when I go to take the next step, they're like, no. So again, there's not enough time to dwell on things like that. There is not enough time again to say, oh, why did they do that? Oh, poor me, or I must have done it. What did I do wrong? Or, there wasn't. There was no time for that, and I knew that. It was like, okay. And right around that time, I believe, right around that time is when I had some conversations about alcoholism and about making choices, and about, I was told it's none of your business, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, so I needed to go out on my own. So I still had my goal of going to college. So I did go to junior college, which they did pay for the first year or two. And then I transferred to a university. I mean, so it was after so in the United States, we have a junior college. And a junior college is mostly for the undergraduate foundational basic work. They can have other programs that are like certificate programs and things like that. But the 2-year program gives you your math, your science, English, all the basic things you need for a well-rounded education. Then you go on to university, or what's called a 4-year program. So I had already maxed out what I could do at the junior college, the 2-year program, which is a much cheaper program, less expensive. And now I had to go to university. So when I wanted to go to university, this is when they're like, oh, well, here you could go to this university, but now we've decided we're not going to pay for it. But they never sat me down and said, for whatever reason, it's too expensive. It could have been anything, but they did not sit me down and communicate with me. And so when I asked, here I am in my innocence, maybe my naivete, and they're like, oh, no, we're not doing that. Why would you think we're doing that? We have gaslighting. We have all kinds of things that we talk about that now, but then we didn't. So it's like, okay, no, I have to, it's my life. It's not their life. It's my life. I have to keep going. It's probably better if I pay for my own education, because I don't want them to have any kind of say in my life. I mean, I've already been abused and they wouldn't stand up for me. They told me I have to be silent. I've already tried to stand on my own, and they gave me no money to support me. Other than paying for my ticket back and giving me these false promises. So then here I was again a couple of years later. I'm like, okay, well then I need to go work. I need to go to college. And so I just kind of put one foot in front of the other. I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I knew that I wasn't going to give up. I knew that I would figure it out. And that's what I did. I just put one foot in front of the other, one class at a time. Being in classes, I met somebody who I'd worked in smaller jobs, been parlaying my administrative experiences and excelling in what I did so I could get into another job with more responsibility and more money. And again, I remember now that they also promised that they would put me through college, but they're like, no, we're not going to. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I'm like, okay, I need to find someplace else. I need to change. I need to switch here. And so I had a classmate, and she's like, I work for a really large Fortune 500 company. Let me try to get you an interview, because you're somebody that they would really want to have, because she knew the kind of person I was, and we'd become friends, and we'd had classes together. And she'd gone to school 10 years later. She'd worked in the office and gone back 10 years later, because we met at night school. So that's what I ended up doing, is in order to be able to get my college education, I ended up having to work full time during the day, a full-time 40-hour-a-week job. Then I also went to school at night. Then I also worked a second job on the weekends, and then I studied in between. And that was my life. Like, that basically was my life for another 3 years on top of the 2 years. So with 3 years now at university, putting one foot in front of the other. And so this job for the Fortune 500 company, I did get that job, and they did have tuition reimbursement. It's just that I had to make sure that it had to be in business administration or something that would be applicable to their business and what they saw as that career path for me. So actually, they're the ones that came in, and I worked for them, and I did an excellent job for them, and I got promoted. And I did another tape with another experience, and that I have a podcast that I'll be uploading about that. But at the end of the day, I was able to get there, and they paid for my education. So they paid for my books, they paid for my education. They gave me an amazing, awesome working experience. And in so many ways, I would have worked for them for the rest of my life. But of course, if you've already heard some of my story, nothing is ever going to be set in place and be smooth sailing. So I did work for this company, and I did get my degree, and they ended up, like so many big companies, contracting. And so they had taken my job, and it was there were 4 other centers in the United States that did the exact same thing that I did. And so they relocated everybody to Atlanta, Georgia, and I wasn't ready to go to Atlanta, Georgia. So at that time, I I got some severance. And by then I decided that I really wanted to take time off and go into the Peace Corps because of where my heart was, and having completed this huge thing with my education. And one little caveat was that also, like at the end of getting my degree, I thought, I really would like to have an amazing friendship and relationship with my partner. I would love to have some amazing kids. And in a flash, I wasn't something I was consciously doing prior to that. I sat down and I visualized created a visualization with movement and feeling of what that life could look like. And I sat down, I said, here's my beautiful house, right? Like a Talking Head song. Here's my amazing partner and husband and soulmate. Here's our amazing kids and our amazing animals. And I asked myself, now how do I feel? Am I content? Am I happy? Am I complete? And I was like, no. The house didn't fill that need. The partner didn't fill that need. The kids didn't fill that need. Even the animals didn't fill that need. That was an amazing thing that society and my upbringing would make me think that would be a meaningful life. But I said, no, there's got to be more to life than just that. That's not going to satisfy me. And I said, I think I need to take a year off. I think I need to go into the Peace Corps. That was really what my intention was. I should go to the Peace Corps for a year, 2 years, go teach, go serve, and decide. So I was also deciding whether I wanted to be in healthcare, or I wanted to be in training, or if I just wanted to be in business. And I thought, okay, I need a little more experience. And what I ended up doing is I didn't go into the Peace Corps, but I did end up going and dedicating a year of my life to a conscious community. And we focused on universal peace for a year. We were involved in working on a working farm and learning how to grow food and create community. And we supported, there were like about 18 other centers throughout the Midwest, spiritual centers. Once a weekend, people would come in for like a work weekend and a meeting weekend. And it was in the Ozarks of Missouri. And it was very intense. It was an amazing experience because of the people, because of the land, being able to come in, learning how to really serve with my heart. The things that tore me down were that I did not know, and they kept it from you. Former students were never allowed to really tell you the minuses. They could only tell you the pluses. And so one of the things that I found out early on is like we never got any sleep. And yet there were certain things like our spiritual exercises, like meditation and a type of yoga and journaling and reading. And we were never given time during the day to do that. So we would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning milking cows. We'd be making cheese. There was about 15 of us that lived full time. So we were doing dishes and we were doing laundry. We were taking care of the cows and pigs and chickens. We were out in the orchard. We were taking care of the our garden. We were taking care of the business aspect for the other 15 centers. It was all volunteer for us. We paid in order to be there for the year, and then everything else was a part of like our education, part of working towards a doctorate or a master's degree in metaphysics. And so I got there and I really loved it. I loved the people, but I never realized that we were never going to be given time to do the things that we needed to do. And so I got no sleep. I was a complete mess. We were completely forced that when people came in to be shiny, happy people and pretend like everything was okay. And of course, people that knew me knew that I wasn't being my genuine self, but I had to create this false persona, happy, go, lucky, nothing's bothering me, and it crushed me. And so at the end of the year, rather than feeling empowered the way that I wanted to, I had a lot of questions. I was proud of myself for doing the things that I did. It almost seemed like the last 3 months of me staying there is like they really wanted to get rid of me. And I was like, oh no, oh heck no, you do not know what I've been through in my life, that I can handle whatever you put my way because I am going to finish this. You are not going to talk bad about me. You are not going to say I'm a quitter. So I put up with even more, not physical abuse, physical in the way of sleep deprivation, piling on things than no superhuman could do. But we were 20-somethings. I mean, that was the thing. They pulled in 20-somethings. And during that year that I was in service, I had a lot of questions, and I mostly had to focus on getting done and getting out there. And it was only afterwards that I found out that I probably was the only person that was doing that. I was probably the only person staying up late at night and doing all that, because later on, after people had left this organization and gone and done other things, they would say things to me like, well, when we were out baling hay, we would take breaks and we would do our meditation. When we were doing this, we would be reading that material we needed to read. If we needed to do an exercise, we would do it. So they would, mostly the guys, would be away from the house, and mostly the women were at the house because it was very traditional in many ways. But we were take care of the cows and the chickens and the pigs, and we were taking care of the orchard and all that kind. We were doing the laundry, we were doing the cooking, we were doing the cleaning, all those things, and all those things were in the main halls. We were constantly being watched over by the leaders. We couldn't get away with anything. You practically had to ask for a break to use the restroom and not be there too long. So we never had an opportunity to do any of that. So of course they never shared with me that that's what they were doing. It was only until later, which of course it only played into how destructive that place was, and how was something I was wanting to do to help make the world a better place, and other people needed energy, vitality, they needed commitment, they needed someone who could be easily manipulated at the end of the day to stay committed to a higher vision, except they hijacked my higher vision just to empower the kind of life and what they wanted to do. And I was controlled by not being able to be honest about what was happening. I was being controlled by not having been given many times the accurate and truthful information. I was given information that would manipulate me into a desired outcome, and having known me for 5 years, they were really good at it. They knew my weak spots. They knew what would get me to serve and move forward and try to not ask questions. And at the end of 7 years, I was I was in this place where I was like, okay, I'm not going to finish this. This is probably another 4 years, maybe a little bit longer, before I would have finished a 2-year program. And I decided that I wasn't going to do that. And that, again, I had faced them head on. And And I'll end with this, like, if you can relate to this anyway, but it's kind of like if you've ever been in, I will say, a religion, a spiritual program, even a psychological program, where they say, oh, if you do all these exercises and all this reading, there's many, many, many things, you know, Dianetics, there's the, I'm not going to say all the names because you probably have other names you know, but for sure, that was my experience. So the experience was, do these exercises, commit to this service, commit to how you think and what you do, and sacrificing everything, not getting paid, and dedicating your whole time, your whole energy, everything, not reading any other books, not watching any TV, not taking in any other teachers, because that would be like breaking a bond, breaking a trust. Our students could, but we could not, as teachers and directors and other people that were field directors at the time. And so I did all my exercises. I did everything they asked me to do, because I didn't want them to have any way to say, well, she didn't do her exercises, or she was doing will busters like drinking or smoking. It was her fault that the lessons didn't work. If she'd done the lessons, it would have worked. I was very dedicated. They did not realize who I was and what I wanted to do, and I didn't make a big splash. I asked questions, but I took that information and I just did the very best that I could with it, right? I'd been in a narcissistic family. I had my training, you know, I knew where to pick where the lines lay and when to cross and when not to cross, but I was tired of it. I was so ingrained in this situation. And so one thing I did is I was asking questions of my teacher, and she was saying, no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing this thing wrong. It was a type of meditation, and she'd be like, that shouldn't be happening. And so I thought, that's not right. Even though everyone around me is telling me that I'm not doing this right, I didn't feel that was true. And I was very much wanting to be a people pleaser, but I could not give up myself. And so I kept that to myself. So that was that. The second thing was knowing that I'm doing everything that I need to do, and knowing that the leaders had just lied to me manipulated me to get me to move to Dallas, Texas, which I love Dallas. I always wanted to be there, but they completely manipulated me and only told me a little bit of truth and did not tell me the whole picture of why I was being sent there. And I walked into a complete and total FS show. It was horrible. The minute I walked in the door, I was confronted by somebody who was angry and who was leaving and who was not what the situation is they told me I was going to be into. So I could talk about that another time. So anyway, I had gone back to them and said, look, why don't we do some things to bring world peace to more people? Why don't we encourage people who can't maybe come into the program, which is 12 months long and 8 years long, even though they say it's 2, it's 8 years long, and everyone parades around about how, oh, I've been here for 13 years and I haven't graduated. And you're like, that's crazy. And that's supposed to make me feel like I have to put in 13 years? I don't think so. But anyway, I approached them and I said, you know, there's some great ways that we can expand it, because we were shrinking at the time. I'm like, here's a concept. Why don't we ask people what their ideas are? And then why don't we mentor them and support them to create their ideas? And I thought that just solves all the problems, and that you don't have to externally motivate people because they're internally motivated, and you give them choices and you provide opportunity and you present things. And I hadn't realized at that moment in time how manipulated I was. I hadn't realized that the brainwashing, of course, was so consistent, that when I walked in there fully thinking this is a great idea, because obviously I was doing my exercises. Had I not been doing my exercises, I actually probably would have been more complicit, I guess, in what they were wanting to do. But because I was doing my exercises, I did later question, are you doing your spiritual exercises? Are you doing your meditations? Are you growing spiritually? Is your awareness and your perception and your heart growing? I think not, because they still tried to use the same tactics with me, which like, well, you don't know enough, and we think that you're trying to circumvent the things that we're trying to do. And they came in and they started sending my field director in to check up on me. And they really wanted to establish relationships with my current students so that if I left, they wouldn't leave because they had someone else who would come in and who would make that connection. So it was never about me. It was never about keeping me. It was never about helping me contribute to have them grow. It was about them covering their you know what. And they came in and they took things away from me, and they acted like I was they acted like I was stealing something, and like none of this was true. And at that point in time, the my own thinking and my own power, my own inner flame has started to rise. It had started to rise the day I got into Dallas and I found this big old fat lie that confronted me in the face. I found out the day in which people started coming into where I was and questioning what I was doing. And I would ask the questions on the weekend and people would like humiliate me instead of giving me an answer. And I could just see that the more they did that, the more my flame rose. And to the point where I had said, even during that time, I'm still doing the exercises because I'm still seeing value. And all this is helping me generate this self-esteem and self-sovereignty and self-love and seeing things clearly and having to step through that ring of fire that they were making higher and higher. They did not realize that I had the fortitude and the willpower and the love and the passion to go ahead and do it because I was not wasting my energy on trying to seek revenge on them. I was not trying to catch them up in their words. And this is something that right now I see that it's related, I think it's related to innocence. That I've really felt like I have always been that kind of person. But what is an innocent? An innocent isn't a naive person who overlooks the obvious. An innocent is somebody who looks through that situation and knows that that's an illusion or that's just baloney. And that once I get past that, that won't be affecting me. So I didn't need to lash out. I knew who I was, even if it was on an inner feeling level. And by that point, I realized that was never going to happen. I realized that they did not value me. And I'd already started making contacts for living a life with my degree, living a life and having an excellent job in Flower Mound, Texas. And I stayed in Flower Mound for a really long time. Thank you, Marlena. Said a lot tonight. So that helped me get out of that. And again, it took me about a year. It took me a year where I got to just kind of be in Texas, supporting myself, but I did find some other spirituality. I found a place where I can dance and I could sing, I could be accepted for who I was. I learned to cook and create and take care of things. It was I'll talk about that in another video, but I guess that's it for tonight. But that's it. That was a 7-year experience of a spiritual matrix. And there are spiritual matrices. There are business matrices. There are all kinds of ways in which other people will see as an opportunity to enslave us. And I want to just keep growing this opportunity. It's a space in which I just really want to share. It's a space in which I know from my observations in the last 6 months, there have been so many people that have been hurt by religion, and children that are still being hurt by religion, that are being hurt by war. our own inner child, I do believe, is connected to a consciousness of inner children. So whether somebody is a physical inner child or our own inner child, I think that it is a part of who we are to do something, to care for ourselves first. I mean, it couldn't be any more true now than the saying, as you used to always say in an airplane, with the put your mask on first to get the oxygen and then help children and people around you, because you have to be supported in order to help other people, right? So it's like never been more true than it is today. And not to allow other people to say taking care of yourself is selfish, because it's not. Because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like like I learned in my days of being sleep deprived, you have to have a safe place. Even if it's a room with a bed and a lamp. It's your room, it's your bed, it's your lamp. It's your sacred space. And you have to have good nutritious food, and you have to have sunshine and nature. You have to have love, and you build from there, right? And don't let other people tell you you need something different. And if you ask for something from somebody and they can't give it to you, or there's a hook in that, there's too much that they're going to ask in order for you to receive it, then move on. Like I did. I asked for something from my parents, they couldn't do it. I asked for something for another job, they couldn't do it. I asked for another one for another job, and that promise came through. But it was a long line of broken promises, but I did not give up. I kept going. And so today I sit here thinking about, again, like I said, I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. I want you to know that you make a difference in your own world. This is 2025, and I live in the United States. And the biggest thing that I would request of you to do, don't look at the media, don't look at things that would not be beneficial for your inner child to grow and to flourish. Yes, it's important to we also be our parent. We have to provide that nurturing, the support, in order to be able to not go into debt, to live debt free. We need to also be our own spiritual advisor, our inspirational, creative, connected, inner advisor. And also boundaries, to have our own spiritual warrior, to have our spiritual warrior and healer. And right now, the thing that I have really seen flourish the most is a teaching that I was introduced to a couple of years ago, and a teaching that I have used. And that is just simply what I said, is that each one of us has this inner family, an archetype, and another teaching is that it's our sub-personalities. And so the way to feel fully supported is to do this on your own. And when you are fully supported by taking care of your inner child, that inner nurturer, inner parent, that advisor, creative inner advisor or seer or spiritual person, and then also our own spiritual warrior. Very often my pictures come up of a spiritual warrior. It's a very intense indigo blue, and it has a shape like a circle around my forehead, and then it has like an anchor that goes around. And when I see that, I'm like, yes, I am that spiritual warrior. I am that spiritual warrior for harmony. I'm that spiritual warrior for children in the world. I'm the spiritual warrior for justice. And how it starts with me. It starts with me and what I have to contribute. It starts with you and what you have to contribute. And it's very simple and very easy to take care of it, but you're the only one that can do that. It is an inside job. You can't have an outside friend who nourishes you and fills you up, and like Jerry Maguire says, show me the money. But you have to be this self. You can be this for yourself. You can love yourself, you can nurture yourself, you can talk to yourself and advise yourself. That spiritual advisor sees the bigger picture. That spiritual advisor sees the principles. The spiritual advisor sees the universal laws and then the divine laws to live what it's like to live in the matrix and outside of the matrix, and how to live with your awareness that's expanded, that's beyond the matrix, while we're still here in the matrix. And to me, that's the final classroom, is here in the physical, doing these things that we need to do. This is one thing that I look at every day. My inner child, my inner nurturer, my inner inspiration, my sage, my advisor, my mentor, my coach, all the same. And then this spiritual warrior. I will end with this, is that when I was in that metaphysical entrapment, one of the things I was told is you do not need to protect yourself. There are some spiritual teachings, they say, where you have to protect yourself and you don't need to be protected. So as soon as I had left, I had actually had the opportunity to get a reading. And this reading was an energetic reading, mentally, emotionally, physically, what was going on in my environment, what was going on within me, what was manifesting in my environment. And I had just moved into a place that I could afford. It was $110 a month, and it was a trailer. It was in a trailer park, and they rented out the vacant trailers. So it was humble, and it was home. And I thought, well, I need to get this information because I want to just like check, are there any blind spots that I have? Are there any weaknesses within me? My environment was much different than what I was used to. So I was like doing an assessment. And in this assessment, it said that I didn't realize that the past people who had lived in that place, that their energy was still very present. And I'm like, what? It's the first time I'd ever really heard that. In that moment in time, because like I said, I had 7 years of this brainwashing of you don't need protection, it doesn't really happen, blah, blah, blah. And they said that energy is still alive. And one of the things it also said is, imagine you walk into a room where there was a meeting, and you walk in and you're feeling a little hot, you're feeling uncomfortable, a little sticky. Doesn't seem to be any kind of physical reason why you don't want to be there, but you didn't know somebody just got fired in that room, and that energy and that shock of that person and the vibration of that still fills the room because environments are alive and they take on that energy. And so what they said was, and I didn't know about feng shui, and I didn't know about sacred energy or clearing things, obviously, because I was held back. You can't learn from that. I was humiliated. I was stopped from researching things that would have helped me in many ways. So this reading was also from a reputable person. This information, this energetic blueprint of what was happening, and I thought, oh my goodness, I never realized this, but it said, it went in to say that when you meditate, be sure that you're connecting with your own energy, because oftentimes you're connecting with the anger and the other things that are going on in that environment, and you are identifying that. This was critical. You're identifying other things in your environment as your own, and that is detrimental to your health. And so it also said that it is so pervasive that this one just needs to move. This one needs to move quickly. This one needs to move. This one needs to seek out another environment. And so I listened to it. I thought, okay, at this point, nothing had happened. At this point, I just moved in. I'm just wanting to get a clearing of this space. I'm wanting to get an assessment mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, because I had learned about that. And so I was thinking I need to move, but I really didn't want to move because I didn't have a lot of money. I just got there. I just wanted to, like, maybe for a year and save money up and have that emergency fund, right? Because it was just me I was depending on. But then within a couple of weeks, people were pounding on my door in the middle of the night, and I'm like, who is that? And they were looking for somebody, and I was like, and this is a little triggering. I was safe and everything, but they was like, in the middle of the night, and they're like looking for somebody. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Like, we know you're his girlfriend. Come on out. And so I called a friend of mine and I said, oh my gosh. And they could hear the people pounding on my door because, like I said, it's a trailer. And it was men, loud voices, big pounding. I thought they were going to break in. I didn't know who they were, what was going on. And my friend said, I'm calling the police. You hang up, call the police, and I'm going to come over. So the police were right around the corner. So it took the police about 15 minutes to get there. The police got there, and the men had left by then. And so the police get there. So here I am thinking the police are there to help me, that I'm going to feel safe. I never had this experience before. But listen to this. So it's just me, little old me. And I said, oh, I'm really glad you're here. And I told them what happened about the guys and knocking on the door and yelling, and they wouldn't go away. And I don't know what this is about. And the police looked at me and they're like, we know you're Gary's girlfriend, let's say. I'm like, who? Like, yeah, you're Gary's girlfriend. They want drugs and you didn't give it to them. And so we don't feel sorry for you. I was, of course, crushed and shocked because now the people who I'm expecting to call for help are now questioning me and saying I'm to blame. I had no idea what they were. I really had no idea what they were talking about. But then they were like, "Oh yeah, they're looking for drugs." I'm like, "Drugs?" And he's like, and they're like, "Yeah." And I felt like I had to convince them. And my mom actually worked in the village office. And I said, "Well, then you must know my mom. This is her name. She's a village clerk." And they're like, "Oh, well, this person used to live here." I'm like, well, they don't live here anymore. Do you think that I should move, or do you think they'll come back? You know, I don't think they really had a good response for that because I think they were like, we got to check and make sure that this is correct. So they left and my friend came over and I told them what happened and they're like, you have to move. You have to move. Like, they're like, I know you don't have any money, and they didn't have any money to give me either. And they're like, you have to move because who knows what those people could do? And I was like, you're right. I hate it and I don't want to move. And then I did do a little bit of digging, and I forget exactly. I think what I ended up doing is I went to the front office and I told them what had happened. I said, look, I was only on a month-to-month lease. So I went to the office and I said, look, I need out of here. What can you do for me? If you need my notice now, or what can you do? And they're like, and I told them what happened. I go, listen, you need to know what happened. And they're like, oh, we are so sorry. But, you know, the drug dealer, his parents live next door. Like, they never introduced themselves to you, or they never said anything. I said, no, they never said anything to me ever. Like, they never would have warned me. But I don't know if I would have expected that. But anyway, I also just wanted to say, like, I know what it's like. Like, sometimes you're going to be in a situation, like I was in a situation where I could not stay because of my life, and not for a fault of my own. And it does have a really good ending, because what happened was I was able to get a really wonderful apartment at a decent rate. But what had happened is I was working for a temporary agency, and I realized that I needed to get a full-time permanent job, and then that would increase my income enough to be able to get, you know, a basic apartment that was going to be at a safer place, that I could be more self-assured in. And so that is what happened. But because I wanted more and I wasn't settling for less because of the situation, that's how you can turn a bad situation to look for the blessing. So that blessing was that I probably would have stayed there, that I would have not gone on my way as quickly. And there were many blessings that came in that next situation. Now, was that situation perfect? No, that situation was not perfect, because there was more things that came up with that. But it was better. So I think that was the other thing that I want to say to you, is that being a light worker, being a sensitive person, it's like there have been so many deep and dense, hard, crazy things that I've had to live through in my life. But I did that, and that gave me more energy, more resilience, more ability to understand that even though this really tough thing is happening, it's not my forever, and being able to take that and move forward. And another thing that happens from that, and I've seen it and also has been mentioned in some of these assessments, is that when you clear and when you step up into an experience like this, like it was those drug dealers and it was the police and it was that place, and I didn't just stay there and take it, that I didn't know what to do, but I decided to put my mind and my thought and my actions out into that place, and that then things came in to help me. It's like the universe came in to support me. But I had to say enough, and I'm moving forward. And so stepping on faith means that even though I don't see the things around me which would tell me that what I want is coming about, that I take that next step, that I move myself forward, that I visualize what that place is, that I can live it at least in my heart, in my head, to whatever degree I can, even if it's just a little tiny sliver of a vision, that is enough to get me forward, to close out that experience and to move forward. Not to fight against it, not to be mad about the police because they didn't do the right thing, not to be mad about the people next door because they didn't tell me or warn me. None of those things. Again, I always felt like things happen so quickly that I just flip and I take that information and I say, what about me? How do I get through this? What do I need to do? Those are the times I feel really centered in myself. And as I've come to live more of this life, I've come to understand that actually has always been a part of who I am. Meaning that I don't put a lot of resentment out there. I don't put a lot of revenge energy out there. And it gets back to what I was saying in the beginning about I had somebody tell me that the life that I have is only because I only have so much karma. So if I have been essayed, if I've had a hard life, if I've been abused, if I've been mistreated, if I've been gaslit, all those things is because I deserved it. That was the best you got. And it's not the best you got, because the light workers and other individuals, it's like we've learned to handle these very heavy and dense things and these very light things. And so what we're here to do in the world is understand we're not going to only have light and butterflies and unicorns, or things are not always dark and heavy and dense, that it's like the yin and the yang symbol, and there's a circle in the center. There's a little bit of light in the darkness, and there's a little bit of darkness in the light, so that it all goes together. So when we're in the dark, we light a candle, and when we're in the light, we go in the flow, but we don't insist that things always be positive, because when they're not, and when they're moving back to this other flow of balance, we have to take our own energy and artificially support that. So when I was younger, I noticed that I would lose my energy a lot. Like I'd feel tired and deflated. And it was because I would go out and have to feed this public persona, and that it wasn't natural. And so my chakra system and my energy would go into projecting this image. And that's what made me tired. So when I learned that I wasn't going to do that anymore, that I was just going to be who I am, and again, protect myself, and I have my boundaries, I noticed this huge shift. So what this is about is you noticing your own huge shifts. You noticing, the homework here is journaling about the positive things that help you move forward. Also, write about any experiences where you wanted something and you got disappointed, or you ran out of energy and you almost quit before you achieved it. But you didn't. You kept going. Write about that. What was that? What kept you going? What kept you moving forward? And the other thing is, take those experiences that you have in life and say, what are the things that looked really horrible, really terrible? And how did you turn them? What benefit was in there? What was the blessing, right? Because there's always a blessing if you look for it. So that's what I want you to do. Really think about that, because the things that we can talk about in this channel and the ways that we can manifest our life, it is an inside job. So it's really important, It's most important thing is just about you and your perception and how you see things. So if you're unsure that you make a difference in your life by doing things that are positive, then you do want to start by writing, by journaling, like I said, the things that have gone well, the things you almost gave up on but you didn't, the things that seemed really challenging but there was a benefit in them. So you can start to see that what you put out makes a difference in your world. Okay, because other people can tell stories about how they change things. Other people can tell stories about these great visions they've had or the spontaneous healing they had. But that doesn't grow your awareness and your perception, because that is the only thing that will really grow your awareness and your perception. How many times have people shared with us or been taught to us? It's becoming more popular to say, we want to teach you not how to think. We want to teach you how to think, not what to think. Okay, but there are many narcissistic, cultish type, high mind control environments that will tell you, oh, we want you to think for yourself. But somewhere along the line, that only means we are going to feed you what to think and not to think anything else. You don't truly have freedom if people restrict what are the things that you could look at. Because you know what? This is a part of our growth process. Not being perfect, not doing the way other people do things. No, because you know what? You're supposed to do it the way you do it. And that takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength to know yourself. But that really has been the message this week in so many ways for me, is you just really have to know yourself. So thank you so much and have a wonderful week.